So we're going to try a new tool called HTML5 and CSS3 validation, and that's basically where we use a web tool to help validate our CSS or HTML code if we think we have some errors. So we're going to look at an HTML document that I've created. You should all recognize this. This has the very basic HTML5 format. We can tell it's HTML5 because the doc type is just HTML. And then there's our head, and we have some stuff in the head. We have a link to our CSS file in the head. And the body, we have a wrapper div. The wrapper div, remember, contains all the other divs, all the other sections of the document. We have a header, CSS Zen Garden Simplified. We have a navigation. We have an article, and the article goes all the way down to the bottom of the page. See, there's the close article tag. And within the article, we have some subheads. All right, so participation, benefits, those are all subheads. And then at the bottom, we have a footer. And then we close the wrapper div, we close the body, and we close our HTML. So it's a very basic HTML5 document. It looks good, but we're going to check it out in the validator. So to get to the validator, I go to our class blog, and here we have a tab for HTML5 CSS3. So I'm going to select it. And at the very bottom of this list of HTML5 CSS3 resources, I have the HTML validator links. The first one is for HTML, the second one is for CSS. So I'm going to click on the HTML5 validator, and it says, okay, I can validate by URI, which is basically if my web page were published already on the internet, I could type in the URL. I can validate by file upload, so if I have my HTML file on my computer, I can just upload it and validate it this way. Or I can validate by direct input, and that basically means that you copy and paste or you type the HTML code directly in here and it will check it. So I'm going to update by file upload or validate by file upload. So I'm going to select my newsend.html file and click the check button. Oh look, this document was successfully checked as HTML5. But I passed validation. This is good, but I do have a warning. If I want to see what the warning is, I can scroll down. Notes and potential issues. Oh look, my warning is I'm using their experimental HTML5 checker. In other words, HTML5 is relatively new, and their validator is relatively new, which means that it might not be perfect. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I believe that my HTML5 is fine. Okay, so but let's say I had some mistakes. So I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver, go back into my code, and I'm going to make some mistakes that sometimes I see students make. So one thing that I might do is I might misspell a tag. Remember that HTML5 has a series of predefined tags. So it knows what article means, or what a P is, or what a div is, or what a header is, or a nav is. But if I were to accidentally misspell article, let's say instead of typing in article, I typed in icicle. Okay, I'm going to get an error for that because HTML5 has no idea what icicle is, what a tag called icicle is. It's like, icicle? What is that? Okay, so if I misspell something, that could very easily that will give me an error. Another error I could commit is, let's say I forget to close a tag. So here I have the wrapper div. Remember, the wrapper div is closing all the other content within it. So I open it here on line 11, just below the body tag, and I scroll down to the bottom of the page, and here this close div here, this is closing the wrapper div. Close body, close HTML. So all the content is encased within the wrapper div. But let's say I just forgot to close the wrapper div. Let's see how that would affect my my page. Okay. Another thing I might do is I might misspell a class. Now a class, I can give classes any names that I want, and I have this class here called subhead. Let's just take a look at my CSS. Okay, there's my subhead class. But if I'm going to use this in my HTML document, it must be spelled exactly. So if I misspell this, even by putting a space between sub and head, it's not going to know what that is. Okay, so I have 3 mistakes here. I have misspelled article as icicle. I have misspelled a class, my class subhead, and I have forgotten to close the wrapper div. Let me save this as newsend2. Okay, so let me see what that looks like. Ooh. Okay, so we can see that the mistakes I made, they had some consequences. First of all, let's look at the original for comparison. This is the original, and the article div is on this nice white background. But if I go here, it's no longer on the white background. You know, the white background has disappeared. So that's because I misspelled the icicle. The article div is icicle, so it doesn't know where the article div is or how to style it. Remember, I misspelled subhead on the first time I used it. So although all these other subheads, they have their style, this subhead does not. We can take a look at that in the code. See, I misspelled this as subspace head, the road to enlightenment. But if I go down further here, all the others are spelled correctly as one word, subhead. And then when we look at it in the design, we can see all of the other subheads are fine except for the first one. Now the third mistake I made is I forgot to close the wrapper div, and that doesn't seem to be having a lot of impact on this design. It still looks like it's within an 800 pixel margin, but it will come up as a problem in validation. So let's see what this looks like in the validator. All right, I may have to go. Okay, so I'm going to choose newsend2. That's the file I just made the mistakes in. I'm going to check. Oh no! Errors found while checking this document is HTML5. Okay, so let me see what the errors are. Okay, so we have 5 errors. And this, I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes the language of the errors, they're not that useful. It's like this one. Line 16, column 8, element icicle not allowed as child element of div in this context. You know, what does that mean? Well, we may not know exactly what that means, but the most important thing here is that there's an error on line 16. And it specifically mentions element icicle, and here it shows us icicle. So if I go to Dreamweaver or Sublime Text or whatever you're using, and I go down to line 16, oh yeah, there it is, the icicle tag. And it may take me a little while to realize, oh, that's not supposed to be icicle, that's supposed to be article. Okay, I've misspelled article, and then I can make that change. Okay. Line 52, stray end tag article. Okay, so remember, I just changed this, but initially this was icicle. Let me change this back for a minute. That's icicle. And so at the bottom at line 52, we have a close article tag. Well, we have a closed article, but we never opened article according to the validator because we typed icicle instead of article. And so the validator, it has no idea that icicle and article are related. So it has no idea that these two things are related. All right, but it's just telling you that you have a closed article tag that shouldn't be there. Okay, line 56, end tag for body scene, but there were unclosed elements. Okay, basically what this is saying is that on line 56, that's where the closed body tag is, right? Okay, it says, okay, you closed the body, but you still had things that were not closed in your HTML file. So one thing I know we did not close is, remember, we took out the closed wrapper div. So we opened the wrapper div, but we never bothered to close it. There's no closed div anymore. I took it out. I also have icicle open, but I have no close icicle, even though there's a close article. So one thing that will help me a little bit is if I just type in // it will put in the div there for me because it knows that the div needs to be closed. But I'm not sure. Let's see. Yeah, no. Okay. So it's not going to close icicle for me because it doesn't know what icicle is. Okay. What else does it say? Unclosed element div. Okay, here. So it did identify that we forgot to close the wrapper div. And line 11 is where the wrapper div is opened. Okay, so it says you forgot to close this. You got to put a close tag in there for wrapper div. Okay, so this gave us some information. It wasn't perfect, but it helped us. Notice that it didn't catch things like you misspelled the class subhead. Here we have subspace head. It didn't say anything about this. That's because, as far as it's concerned, this is in proper format. It's not looking at our CSS, so it doesn't know that this is supposed to be this. The validator is just looking at the HTML page. It's not looking at the CSS. So as far as it can tell, there's probably something in our CSS called subspace head. All right, so the only way we know that that is a problem is because when we look at the design, we can see that our style for that particular subhead is not correct. So we're going to have to go through we're going to have to edit, we're going to have to fix that one ourselves. Okay. You can also use the validator to check CSS. So here's my CSS. It's very simple. There's a body style, basically turning the background green. There's the wrapper div. What the wrapper div is, it sets the width for the content, which is 800 pixels, and it sets the margin to auto. Remember, that's the command that centers the content on the page. We have the header div. The header is the area. I'm going to go here. The header is one of those HTML5 tags that lets you use tags to describe content. So we're just using this here as the title of our page, basically. We have a nav div and the style there. We have the article div, the footer div. These are all HTML5 tags that we can use. And then we have the subhead class. And I know that subhead is a class because it begins with a period. And also, I know that wrapper is an ID because it begins with a pound. So remember the way that this works is in the HTML file, anything that's an ID, you use only once. And the wrapper is the thing that you use only once, generally speaking. Anything that you use multiple times, like a subhead style, it's a class that begins with a period in here. And so the browser does not care what we name these things. I could call it peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because when we call it up here in HTML, we're going to say div, and the style is an ID named wrapper. Here we're going to say P, and the style is a class named subhead. So these names can be anything as long as they're consistent. The names that are directly in the tags, there are just a few terms that you can put within the tags that the browser understands. You can't put arbitrary meanings in these tags. You can't just put like peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's not going to understand what that means. Okay. All right, so here's our CSS. And let's validate it first. And we can find the CSS validation page in the same place where we found the HTML validator. So I'm going to go to our blog and go over here to HTML5 CSS3 and go down to the bottom to the CSS validator. It looks just like the HTML validator, We can type in a URL for a CSS. We can upload a CSS file. We can type some CSS directly. So let's first validate our CSS. Here we go, newszen.css. I'm going to check it. Yay! Okay, no errors were found. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, good. All right. But let's say I'm going to go back now to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to make some errors that I have seen students make. So first of all, let's start with the background color. Let's just forget to put the semicolon. And here's the wrapper. Let's, instead of saying 800px, let's forget to put the pixels in there. Let's just do 800, see what happens. This is a little bit unexpected. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen here. Depending on the context, different things might happen. What else can we do here? Let's misspell something. So I'm going to take article and I'm going to call it icicle. That should be fun. What else can we do? Subhead. Let's do something weird with spacing. Oh, here. In the subhead, let's just add a space there between the element, between the value and the semicolon. Okay. And I'm going to save this. And I'm going to call this newszen2 CSS. Okay. And let's just see what the validator has to say about this. So I made some mistakes in newszen2.css. Newszen2.css. I'm going to check it. Oh no, we found errors. Okay, what did it find? Okay. Oh, in the wrapper. Width only 0 can be a length. You must put a unit after your number 800. Okay, so that's interesting. It found only one problem. And this happens sometimes. So here, it called us out on our wrapper width. So it says, I said width 800. I did not specify a unit of measurement. And here it says, you must put a unit after your number 800. So I can go back in there and just add that. Now what's funny to me is it didn't pick up on some of the other mistakes that we made. Okay, so it didn't pick up on icicle because as far as it can tell, icicle is it's in a valid format. It has no idea there's no such thing as icicle in our HTML page. I guess it did not mind the space after px here, although it's a possibility it will not be rendered properly in the browser. Excuse me. So let's test this and see what this looks like. I'm going to change here's our Zen Garden. I'm going to change our CSS here to newszen2.css and see what happens when we look at it. Okay, so one thing that did happen, it looks like the only thing that happened is that again, because we misspelled article as icicle, the correct style did not get applied to our article div. But we changed, I did fix the 800 pixels here. Let's see what happens if I do not fix it. See if the live view can show us anything. Nope, it doesn't want to. Okay, that seems to be okay too. So unless, let's look at it in the browser. Okay, actually, by not specifying a unit of measurement after the 800, look what happens. I no longer have an 800 pixel wide article section or content area because the wrapper div is essentially broken. Okay. So sometimes the CSS validator will help you, and sometimes it will not help you. Change this back to article. Yeah, there we go. But it can help you a little bit because those like little CSS errors can be very, very annoying. So you can use this site and it will help you with some of your problems.